The morning they sold Della Mercer on the courthouse steps, the spring wind off the Colorado plains was so dry it cracked her lips, and she stood very straight in her one good dress and refused to let a single person in that crowd see her shake. She was 23 years old. Behind her, the brick courthouse of Coldwater Bend threw a hard shadow, and in front of her 200 neighbors had gathered the way they gathered for a hanging or a barn raising, and the probate clerk had just read aloud, in a voice meant to carry, that the labor and service of one unmarried female, Della Mercer, daughter of the late Amos Mercer, would be bonded to the highest bidder for the term of 2 years to satisfy the remainder of her dead father's debt. The first bid was $18. It came from a hog farmer who laughed when he said it. If a story like this stirs something low in your chest, the kind of thing that doesn't have words, stay with it to the end and leave the name of the town you're listening from, so the whole country can see how far Della's mourning travels. Because the second bid was 20, and the third was 22, and when the gavel finally fell, Della Mercer had been bought for the term of 2 years for the sum of $25, and the man who bought her had not said one word the entire time. She had known this was coming for 11 days, ever since the bank's notice went up on the post office wall. She had known it the way you know a frost is coming, by the smell and the slant of things, and she had not let herself cry then, and she would not let herself cry now. But she had not let herself believe until the clerk said her name out loud in front of Royce Calloway and Mrs. Tibbet, and the school children let out early to watch that the law of the United States and the state of Colorado would truly permit a grown woman to be set up on a step and sold like a parcel of bottomland. She had no vote. She had no brother. Her father's farm had passed, on his death, not to her, but into the hands of his creditors, and a woman could not so much as sign for the mortgage that had buried him. She was, in the eyes of every statute that touched her, not a person who owned things, but a thing that was owned, and the clerk's flat reading of the bond made that as plain as a slap. Royce Calloway stood at the front of the crowd in a fawn-colored coat with a gold watch chain crossing his vest, and he was smiling. He owned the bank. He owned, by now, half the failed farms between Coldwater Bend and the river, and he had owned Amos Mercer's note, and it was Calloway who had pressed the court to recover every last dollar, down to the bonding of the dead man's daughter. He smiled at Della the way a man smiles at a sum that has come out right. "No hard feelings, Miss Mercer," he said, loud enough for the front rows. "A debt's a debt. The Lord helps those that pay what they owe. My father paid what he owed," Della said, and her voice came out clear, clearer than she expected, so that the snickering near the front died down to hear it. "He paid it twice over. By your books. I'd like to know how a man who borrowed $400 came to owe you better than $900 when they put him in the ground." "Interest, Miss Mercer," Calloway said pleasantly. "Compounding. It's a thing women find confusing." "I'm not confused," Della said. "I kept his books for 9 years. I'm not confused at all." And for just a moment, before she made herself stop, she saw something flicker behind Royce Calloway's pleasant face, something quick and cold, like a fish turning under ice. She filed it away. She did not yet know what it was, but she had spent her whole life being told she was too much and too slow and too plain to matter. And one thing she had learned in that schooling was to watch the faces of the people who thought she wasn't watching. The man who had bought her was named Gideon Marsh, and he ran horses on a quarter section north of town, and his wife had been 3 years dead. Della knew him only by sight, the way she knew everyone by sight in a county that size, a tall, weather-browned man who came to town twice a season and spoke to almost no one. He did not look pleased with himself the way the hog farmer would have. He looked, if anything, ashamed. And when the clerk made Della come down the steps to him, and the broker held out the paper for him to sign, Gideon Marsh signed it fast, the way you'd pull a splinter, and then he took his hat off in front of her, which not one soul in that square had done all morning. "Ma'am," he said, "I've a wagon. You don't have to carry anything." She had a carpet bag with everything she owned in the world, which was not much, and she had braced herself for him to make her walk behind or ride in the bed like a sack of seed. Instead, he set her bag in the front box and handed her up onto the bench beside him, as if she were any neighbor's wife. And a sound went through the watching crowd, a low buzz, because a man simply did not seat a bonded girl up front beside him like that, and Della felt her face go hot. Not from shame this time, but from something she had no name for, something that hurt worse than shame because it was so unfamiliar. They drove north in silence for a long while, the town falling behind them, the green of the new wheat running out flat to the foot of the mountains. Then Gideon Marsh cleared his throat. "I'll tell you plain how it is," he said, looking at the horses and not at her. "My Sary's 7 years old and she's been 3 years without a mother, and I can't keep a house and break horses both. I went to that sale because the bank's got a note on my place too, and $25 to settle a bond was the only way I could square a part of it. I won't pretend it was charity, but I'll not work you like a mule, and I'll not raise a hand or a voice to you. And there's a room at the end of the hall that was meant for a hired girl, and it's yours, with a key, and the key stays with you." He paused. "What do you like to be called?" It was such a small question, and it undid her in a way the gavel had not. Because nobody, in all the years since her mother died, had asked her what she liked to be called. They called her Big Della. They had called her that since she was 11, and her body began doing what bodies do, only hers did it more and louder than the slim, sharp girls who teased her, and the name had stuck like a burr for a dozen years. "Della," she said, when she could trust her voice. "Just Della is fine." "Della," Gideon Marsh said, and nodded once, like he was setting it down somewhere safe. "I'm Gideon. That there ahead's the place." The house was small and plain and clean enough, and the girl Sari was watching from the porch step with the fierce, frightened face of a child who has had things taken from her before. There was an old woman beside her, Gideon's late wife's mother, Hetty, with a spine like a fence post and eyes that missed nothing, and when Della climbed down from the wagon, Hetty looked her up and down once, slow, and Della braced for the verdict. But the old woman only said, "Well, you'll be wanting coffee," and turned and went inside, which from Hetty, Della would learn was as warm as a embrace. The first weeks were strange and quiet. Della cooked because she had cooked since she was 9, and she found she was good at it, better than she'd let herself believe, and Sari, who had started out hiding behind doors, began to drift into the kitchen of an afternoon to watch, and then to help, and then to talk. Gideon was gone from dawn till dusk with the horses, but at supper, he listened to his daughter laugh, and once Della caught him watching the two of them across the table, with an expression so naked and so grateful that he looked away fast and busied himself with his plate. Della told herself nothing. She had learned long ago that hoping for things was a way of handing other people a stick to beat you with, and she had no intention of handing anyone a stick. But the books would not leave her alone. It started small. Gideon kept his accounts in a tin lard bucket, just receipts and notes shoved in any old way, and one rainy day when the horses couldn't be worked, he sat at the table and tried to make sense of what he owed Calloway's bank, and he could not. And he got that white-set look around the mouth that Della had come to know meant a man was scared and would never say so. "Let me," she said, before she thought better of it. He looked at her. "I kept my father's books," she said. 9 years. I'm quick with figures. Let me look." She looked. And what she saw, by lamplight, with Sari asleep and Hetty nodding in the corner, made the hair stand up on her arms. Because Gideon Marsh's mortgage, the note he had signed with his own hand, said one thing, and the statement the bank sent every quarter said another. The interest the bank charged was higher than the note allowed. The principal had grown when it should have shrunk. And the more Della worked the numbers backward, the colder she got, because it was the very same shape, the exact same crooked arithmetic, that had turned her own father's $400 loan into a grave and a girl on an auction step. It was not her father's bad luck. It had never been her father's bad luck. It was a method. She did not sleep that night. She lay in the room at the end of the hall with the key Gideon had given her, and she did the thing she had taught herself never to do, which was hope. And the hope was a hard, bright, dangerous thing, because if she was right, then her father had not died a fool and a failure. He had died a man who was robbed. She needed proof. One altered ledger could be called a clerk's mistake. She needed the pattern. So, Della Mercer began, quietly, on the afternoons when she went to town for flour and thread, to call on the other ruined ones. The widow Tanner, whose husband's place had gone to Calloway the spring before. Old Mr. Sken, who lived now in a soddy on his son-in-law's land because the bank had taken his. The Hollises, the Pruitts. She went to them gentle and plain, a fat girl in a faded dress that nobody feared and nobody suspected, and she asked the one question that mattered. Did they keep their original note? Did they have the paper they'd signed, with the real terms, before the bank's statement started climbing? And one by one, in cigar boxes and Bible covers and under floorboards, the people Royce Calloway had picked clean produced the proof that they had been picked. Della copied every figure into a clean ledger of her own, in her small, even hand, the true number and the bank's number, side by side, page after page, until the truth of it lay between two pasteboard covers and could not be argued with. But Coldwater Bend was a small town, and a girl who asks questions is a girl who is talked about, and the talk that started about Della Mercer was not about ledgers. It came to a head on a warm night near the end of summer. Della had gone down the dark hall for a dipper of water and had stopped, her bare feet silent on the boards, because there were voices on the porch. Gideon's, low, and another, that she placed after a moment as Ezra Stoll, a neighbor, a deacon at the church, a man with a face like a closed door. "I'm only saying it because I'm your friend, Marsh," Stoll was saying. "You can't see it, living out here, but the whole county's gone to clucking. A bonded girl, living under your roof, and you a widower. It don't look right. And that one, of all the girls you could have," he stopped. "Folks held you in high regard, your father before you. You're throwing it away on charity, and worse than charity, on a girl that—" "Finish it," Gideon said. His voice had gone very quiet, the way the air goes quiet before hail. "A man like you could have any decent woman in 3 counties, Stoll said, "and instead you've hitched your good name to a fat girl her own town wouldn't keep? It ain't natural, Gideon. People say things. The bank's already got a note on you. You can't be giving them more to use. Send her back, or pay off the bond, or marry her quiet and proper, if your conscience won't let you do otherwise. Though God knows nobody'd blame you for—" Della did not hear the rest. She had stopped breathing, because every word the deacon spoke on that porch was a word she had said to herself 10,000 times in the dark since she was 11 years old. Not natural, worth less, a thing to be ashamed of. She had spent the whole summer foolish enough to forget it, foolish enough to laugh in a warm kitchen and let a child braid her hair and let herself hope. And here was the world come to the porch to remind her of the truth, in the voice of a deacon, with the scripture handy. She turned, careful and silent, and went back down the hall, and she did not drink the water, and she lay awake with the old cold voice, telling her what it had always told her, that she ruined everything she touched, that Gideon Marsh had been respected before she came, that she was a weight on a good man's name, and that the kindest thing she could do for everyone she had begun, fool that she was, to love, was to be gone. She did not hear Gideon Marsh tell Ezra Stoll to get off his land and not come back until he could speak of a guest in his house, like a Christian. She had stopped listening one sentence too soon, the way the hurt always make us do. So when the letter came, 3 days later, it felt like providence, and like a sentence both. It was from a Mr. Abernathy, a wholesale dry goods merchant in Denver, and it had been a long time finding her, forwarded twice. The widow Tanner had a cousin in the Denver trade, and the cousin had heard tell of a Coldwater girl who could read a ledger backward and forward, and had caught out the bank's arithmetic, and Mr. Abernathy's firm was in want of a bookkeeper they could trust, and would pay a wage, a real wage, paid to her, into an account in her own name, which the new married women's property laws would let her keep, a respectable position, a room of her own, in a boarding house full of working women, a life in which Della Mercer would be, for the first time in her life, not a thing that was owned, but a person who earned. All she had to do was settle the bond, and the wage would cover that in a season, and go. She told no one. She folded the letter into her sleeve, and she carried it next to her skin for a week, and she told herself it was the answer to everything. She would be free. Gideon would be free of the talk. Sari would forget her. Children always did. It was the kind thing. It was the only sensible thing. And the night before the great hearing, the county land court that would decide a dozen foreclosures at once, including the Mercer farm and now the Marsh place too, Della sat at the kitchen table with the true ledger in front of her, and Mr. Abernathy's letter beside it, and she understood with perfect clarity that she had two roads, and that they did not both go the same way, and that she would have to choose like a free woman whether anyone had ever let her be one or not. She chose the ledger. The county courtroom on the morning of the hearing was packed to the doors, because half the people in it stood to lose their land, and the other half had come to watch them lose it. Royce Calloway sat at the front in his fawn coat, with his lawyer beside him and a smile like a man at his own table. The circuit judge, a tired old gentleman named Halloran who had ridden 11 days to be there, called the bank's claims one after another, and one after another. The ruined people stood and had no answer. Because what answer is there to a paper with the bank seal on it? The Mercer farm was called. Calloway's lawyer read the figures. $900 and some on a $400 loan. The judge sighed and reached for his pen. "Your Honor," Della Mercer said, and stood up. A ripple went through the room. A woman did not stand and speak in a land court. A woman had no standing in a land court. The law gave her none. The judge looked over his spectacles at the large, plain young woman in the faded dress, and Calloway's lawyer half rose to object, and Royce Calloway himself turned in his chair, and Della saw again that quick, cold flicker behind his eyes. And this time, she knew it for what it was. It was fear. He had been afraid of her since the courthouse steps, when she'd told him she kept the books. He had simply been too proud to know it. "I've no standing to speak. I know it," Della said, and her voice did not shake. "And I'll sit down the moment you tell me to. But before you sign away my father's farm, Your Honor, I'd ask you to do one thing the law does allow, which is to look at two sets of figures and tell us which is the true one." And she walked to the bench, slow and steady, with the clean ledger in both hands, and she laid it open before Judge Halloran. And beside it, she laid the original notes she'd gathered all summer, the real papers with the real terms, signed by the Tanners and the Skeens and the Hollises and her own dead father, Amos Mercer. Every farm Mr. Calloway's foreclosed on these 3 years. Della said, "The bank's statements charge more interest than the note allows and grow the principal where it ought to shrink, not by accident. The same hand, the same way, every time. My father didn't fail, Your Honor. None of them failed. They were robbed by arithmetic, by a man who knew not one of us could read it quick enough to catch him, least of all a woman they all called too stupid to count past her supper." Her voice rose, and she let it, after 23 years of keeping it small. "Well, I counted. I counted all of it. It's all here. Look at the 8s, Your Honor." He changed the 3s to 8s in the rate. "Look at it under the glass." The lawyer was shouting objections, and Calloway was on his feet, and the judge was rapping for order. But old Halloran had bent his head over the two ledgers, and he had taken out his magnifying glass, and the courtroom had gone dead silent watching him, and Della Mercer stood in the center of all of it, the way she had stood on the auction step, only this time she was not waiting to be priced, she was waiting to be believed. Judge Halloran looked up. He looked at Royce Calloway for a long, long moment. Then he looked back down at the doctored 3s turned into 8s, and the room heard him say, very quietly, "Bailiff, Mr. Calloway is not to leave this room." It broke then, all at once. The widow Tanner began to cry. Old Mr. Skeen came to his feet shaking. And then a sound began that Della Mercer had never in her life imagined would be aimed at her. A clapping that started somewhere at the back and rolled forward and grew until the whole packed courtroom of Coldwater Bend was on its feet. The same town that had stood and watched her sold for $25 in the spring, every one of them roaring, and not one single soul in that room was laughing at the size of her. They were standing for what she'd done. She could not see for the tears, and she felt a steadying hand come to rest light against her back, and she knew, without turning, that it was Gideon Marsh, who had come to lose his farm, and was watching a bonded girl save it instead. Royce Calloway was taken out in irons through the people he'd robbed, and not one of them would look at him, and the man who had thought a fat girl was too slow to catch him went past her smaller than he'd ever been. The notes were thrown out. The farms came back, the Mercer place and the Marsh place and a dozen more, and the deeds were ordered redrawn true. And Della Mercer, who had ridden out of that town in the spring as a debt to be settled, had her father's land restored that afternoon into her own name, on a paper with her own name on it. The first thing she had ever in her whole life been permitted to own. The town changed toward her after that, and that turned out to be its own peculiar kind of hard. The same women who had whispered came now with pies and apologies. Ezra Stoll's wife sent a quilt. Mrs. Tibbet, who had once told Della's mother the child would surely thin out in time, drove all the way out to the Marsh place and twisted her gloves on the porch and said she hoped there were no hard feelings, and Della found she had no taste for cruelty and no taste for false sweetness either, and she said only that there was coffee if Mrs. Tibbet wanted it, and let the rest lie. It was Hetty, sharp old Hetty, who found Mr. Abernathy's letter when she was turning out the wash, and held it up, and said nothing, only looked. And that evening Della took it out to the corral fence where Gideon stood, watching his horses come in against the long gold light. And she told him the truth, all of it, because she was done being a thing that other people decided about. "There's a firm in Denver wants my figures," she said. "A wage in my own name, a room of my own. I've the land now, and a way to make my own living off the books in town, if I don't want to farm it. I don't need the bond settled to go. I could pay it myself by Christmas." She made herself look at him. "I'd have been gone already. I had it half decided the night I heard Ezra Stoll on your porch telling you what I was." Gideon Marsh was quiet a long time. Then he said, "You left before he finished. I told him to get off my land." He turned the brim of his hat in his hands, around and around. "I'm not going to ask you to stay because of the bond, Della. The bond's done. I'll tear it up tonight. You owe me nothing, and you never did. And I'm not going to tell you a man like me's doing you a kindness, because the kindness has been all the other way, and I've known it since the first supper my girl laughed at this table." He stopped and started again, rougher. "What I'd ask, if I've any right to ask anything, is that you'd stay because you wanted to. Not bonded, not beholden. As my wife, if you'd have a horsebreaker with a mortgage and a daughter who thinks the sun comes up out of your apron pocket, but only if it's a thing you'd choose. I'll not have you choosing a roof again. I've seen what that costs you." Della Mercer looked out over the land that was hers now. The wheat and the corral and the small clean house with the lamp just lit in the kitchen window, and she looked at the road that led to Denver and a wage and a room of her own, every foot of it real and earned and waiting. And she looked at Gideon Marsh standing there with his hat in his hands, asking her not to belong to him, but only to want to. And she understood that this exact moment, free to go and asked to stay, was the thing she had been robbed of her whole life and never once allowed, a choice that was truly hers. "They sold me on a step for $25, she said slowly, "and I never got a say in it. My whole life nobody asked me what I wanted. They told me. And now here's the whole wide world swung open in front of me. Denver and a wage and being nobody's bonded girl ever again, and I can go anywhere I please." She stepped close to him, closer than she had ever let herself stand to any man, and she did not flinch, and she did not look down. "And the only place in all of it I want to be is this hill. So I'll stay, Gideon Marsh. Not because I was sold here, and not because I've nowhere else, because I've somewhere else now, and money to get there. I'll stay because out of everything that finally opened up to me, this is the only thing I ever got to want out loud. I choose it. I choose Sari, and that fierce old woman in there who pretends she can't stand me, and this stubborn land, and you. And I'll keep the Denver firm's letter forever, because it's proof I had a choice, and I chose you free." Gideon Marsh closed the careful distance he had kept between them since the courthouse, and Della Carter, Della Mercer, no longer by the next spring. But Della Marsh, who had been sold for the price of a hog in front of a laughing town and called worthless her whole life by every soul who was ever supposed to love her, did not run, and did not flinch, and was not afraid. They were married in the little church in the valley, and Hetty cried and pretended it was the wind. Della kept the books for half the county after that, honest books, the ones the new bank trusted, and her own farm she leased out to the widow Tanner's grown son, on terms that let him buy it true. Sari grew up tall, and grew up knowing that her mother, the one who had chosen her, had once stood up in a court where the law gave women nothing and made an old judge take out his glass and look. And on long winter evenings, when the wind came down off the mountains and the lamp was lit, Della Marsh would sometimes take Mr. Abernathy's old letter down from the shelf where she kept it pressed in her Bible, and read it over, and put it back smiling, because a woman who has been told her whole life that she is a debt other people pay should never lose the one piece of paper that proved, in her own hand, that she was a person who got to choose. She had ridden into that valley, a thing that had been bought. She lived out her long and well-loved life on it as a woman who owned her land, her name, her figures, and her own true heart, chosen and, at the last, choosing back. And she was never, not for one single day of the rest of it, alone. Della never lost more weight or grew an inch prettier by the world's measure, and she didn't have to. What changed was that one quiet man asked her to stay instead of telling her to go. So, look around at the people in your kitchen tonight and tell them what they like to be called and ask them to stay. Worth was never about the size of you. It's about being seen. A small note for you. This story was created and fictionalized by AI, made simply to bring you a little entertainment while carrying one warm, true lesson that every person deserves to be seen, valued, and freely chosen.